Hi everyone, welcome back to the Curator's Shelf. My name is Nydia, and yes, this week's topic is tarot decks. So basically during quarantine, I found myself really wanting to avoid buying a lot of items and things to keep me occupied. And one of the things I found was that I was digging into my shelf and I rediscovered my old tarot decks. And that was an incredible joy just to have those at hand. I find that tarot can be really good at just helping me to look at things differently, give me a different perspective on something. And I'm somebody that began with tarot from the traditional RWS system. So my very first tarot deck was the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which I'm sure you're all aware of. The Pamela Colman Smith imagery that she created, and the very first tarot deck that I have is actually, I'll just grab it over here. There it is. It's the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and this is a very well used deck. You can see the box is already starting to fall to pieces actually, but anyway, I had been working with tarot decks about 5, 6 years ago, and then I for a while just put them away. And quarantine was a time when I rediscovered my old decks, but also it was a great way for me to check out what was there. And YouTube is a fantastic channel, because a fantastic platform, because there are loads of great tarot tubers out there. So basically this video is about tarot decks which I've picked up since then upon recommendation from my favorite tarot tubers. And yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to them first and foremost, and also a disclaimer that these are decks that might not necessarily be their favorite deck, but because of their walkthrough or their review, I kind of was really tempted to check out the decks myself, and so therefore I went ahead and purchased them. All of these decks are mass market decks. The price range is somewhere between 17, 18 euros up to 25, 30 euros, so very reasonably priced. And yeah, it's actually a range that I've picked up for this deck, video. So I'm going to just start off by first and foremost talking about one of my favorite decks, which is the Crow Tarot. A great deck in terms of its mass market production. As I've mentioned, it's a US Games publication. The author is MJ Cullinan. Hopefully I pronounced this correctly. She's the author and the artist of this deck. And as I understand, this was originally an indie deck that became a mass market deck. Okay, so as you can see, it comes in a box like this, really, really good quality. It's a US Games production, as I mentioned. Comes with a little white book that here you can see. And yeah, and these are the backs of the deck. And I actually love this deck because I think that first and foremost, the cardstock quality is absolutely beautiful. It's a really good size production. You know, I've got very small hands, and it's fine. It's very easy to shuffle and to use, and the actual thickness of the cardstock is really good as well. I think it's perfect in terms of shuffling and handling. And so one of the things that I absolutely love this energy of this deck is that it's a collage deck. And as you can see here, the colors of this deck are wonderful. It's very autumnal. You can see that she's used some fabulous borders around it, but also the reason why I wanted to mention this deck first and foremost is that I absolutely love the fact that A, there's no people in the deck, it's just crows, and B, what I really like about this deck is that I sometimes get the feeling that there's a bit of satire in this deck, a little bit of it's a Rider-Waite-Smith system. But the energy of the deck makes me really kind of smile. It's almost as if there's a little bit of a joke going on, a satire. And an example of that is this card, actually. This is my favorite card of the deck, which is the Four of Swords. And traditionally, the Four of Swords would be a deck which is more about meditation, sleeping, resting, allowing the subconscious to come up. But as you can see from this card, the crow looks dead, basically. And I've always laughed when I've seen this this card, because it actually, for me, makes me feel a little bit like there's a bit of a relationship between death and sleeping. And yeah, so I just thought I'd mention that it's one of the reasons why I really like this deck is because it makes me smile. It's almost like the author wants me to think a little bit further about the card than what usually there is. I also really like the fact that she's kind of like got there's something about the imagery which makes me want to step into it. I understand it's the Morrigan energy. Hopefully, I'm saying this right. So that's the goddess that this is referring to. And what I personally like about also this deck is that I kind of like get the feeling that there's the story of the crow going on, and it also reminds me a little bit of the film from the 1990s called The Crow. It's a famous 90s movie, and yeah, there's something about it that kind of like I like the symbolism of it. So anyway, so this is a deck that I picked up at the end of summer. I'm going to link it below, the Amazon link to it. I bought it from Book Depository actually, but I can give you the link to it. And yeah, and thank you to Nina from Shuffle Tarot, who actually has done a really good walkthrough of this deck. So I'm going to link her below as well. I just want to say big thank you to Nina because of her walkthrough, I kind of like was tempted to check this deck out, and I'm really glad I did. So yeah, so this is the first deck that I wanted to show you. Okay, so the second deck that I'm going to go into is, and yeah, so this is another one from the Celtic tradition, and this is a big thank you to Kelly from The Truth and Story. It's a recommendation from her. And before I even show it, I just want to say this is a deck that traditionally I would not have picked up. If I'd seen it in a bookshop, on a shelf somewhere, I'd have just gone straight past it. Definitely online, I'd have just scrolled past it through. But Kelly from The Truth and Story really likes this deck, and I just wanted to pick it up and see, like, okay, I want to try something different, actually. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a deck that I wanted to try something which I traditionally wouldn't buy. And so it is, and I'm going to show it to you, it's Tarot of the Old Path. So this is an AGM deck. The author of the deck is Howard Rodway, but I also know that he worked with several women to produce this deck that he's listed in the little white book at the back here. So I just want to say that a big shout out that he did actually work with several women to create this deck, female authors, and it's called Tarot of the Old Path. It's referring to that kind of like old Celtic energy. Personally, I think that it really reminds me of medieval times. So here are some of the images from it now. It's got a lot of white space, but I think that makes the color pop even more. And even though it's called Tarot of the Old Path, what I find interesting about this deck is that there's a certain modern twist to it as well, and I don't know how else to frame it. The deck was published in 1990, and since then it's had reprints, but so it is 30 years old. But I personally really like the deck in terms of it's from the medieval times, and yet the colors and the punch of the colors is very, very strong. The cardstock quality is absolutely stunning, and I'll just show you some of the more minor arcana. A lot of white space, but it actually makes the images stand out even more to me. It's kind of like, slightly old-fashioned in some ways, but I like it. I like the fact that these are images that I would not normally encounter in day-to-day life. It's got that kind of like bard energy. That's what I want to say. Bard, yeah. And yeah, I kind of like, it makes me smile now when I see this deck, and when I kind of like use it every now and then. It's definitely one which, because it's not something that I would be drawn to naturally, it kind of like makes me work a little bit harder at looking at the images. That's the back of them, which I think is absolutely lovely. I really, really love the colors and the whole imagery used. I think that you could even make a tattoo out of this, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, I really like this deck in that sense, and I wanted to say a big thank you to Kelly for recommending this. Definitely something that's helping me to expand when I actually read when I do tarot readings for myself, for sure. The next deck, and I'm building up here as you might imagine actually, is another deck that has pushed me out of my comfort zone. Now this is a deck that I'm going to hold up here, which is the right way around, which is the Osho Zen Tarot, and I want to say a big thank you to Lisa Papez from Supportive Tarot who recommended this. So first of all, there was a video that Lisa did, which is her favorite decks of the decade, that I think she did last year, and in that she mentions the Osho Zen. And I bought it upon that recommendation. And since then, Lisa has also done a deep dive into this deck. So I'm going to link that below. And I want to say a big thank you to Lisa for recommending this deck. I picked this up for twofold reasons. From her recommendation, and the other thing is that my brother and his family, I'm of Indian origin. They lived in Pune, in India for a while. And the Osho Institute is based there. So I've actually gone past the Institute several times. I know of it. I also understand there's a lot of controversy around it, which I can understand and appreciate. I have put all of that aside in order just to explore the deck. So just a big disclaimer there. But I am very sensitive to the fact that I do understand that for some people this is going to be very uncomfortable for them. So just to be very upfront and clear that I've kind of like had to just put it aside for now, just so that I can explore this deck as a tarot deck. Now, first of all, this deck is again from the 1990s too. The publisher is again, I just want to check to make sure, but I'm sure it's AGM. Yep, AGM or AG Muller. It's printed in Belgium, which I always find ironic. I live in Belgium. I'm in Brussels, Belgium. So I always find it ironic that a lot of the AGM decks are actually printed here. And yeah, so it comes with its own book. I'm sure many of you have seen this deck in many walkthroughs. I think that this deck has pushed me out of my comfort zone because it's just not something that I would pick up. And I'm going to expand on that when I show you the images. Now the illustrator, and I want to say her name correctly, is Ma Deva Padma, and I understand that she is the illustrator of this deck, and what I also understand is she made a second deck called the Tao Oracle, and I haven't bought that or used it, so I'm gonna actually invest in that deck in the future and check it out because I really want to see how that is. But this deck, when I opened the box originally and took out the cards, it was just a bit of a shock. So these are vector images, and as you can see, they're not the traditional tarot deck images. I think Lisa recommended it because it was her first tarot deck and she was drawn to it because it's not traditional images. It was something out of the ordinary, and I really appreciate that. I really like the images themselves, but I have had a bit of a struggle with this deck because of the border. I don't absolutely like the border at all. There's something about it that's very 90s graphic. It reminds me of when computers began to be used and we got a computer in our family, and in those old days from 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And it does really remind me of that era. And yeah, it's very nostalgic in that sense. But her actual artistry, I think, is absolutely amazing. I can't fault that, of course. I'm not a graphic designer or an artist myself. I do appreciate though the value of the composition of her work and the colors that are used and the imagery. I also think it's a very intelligent deck. The way it's been done, it really pushes the boundaries in terms of the images and then the titles. Lisa has done a really good walkthrough. Lisa Papez has done a really good walkthrough of this deck, so I'm going to link it below. But I do recommend this deck if you're refreshing your tarot practice after being out for many years. You haven't used this deck before, I think it's going to be quite a challenge because I am finding myself being challenged by it. The other thing that I want to say about this deck, and I might go into it a bit further if people are interested, is that whilst it's called the Osho Zen Tarot, there are certain themes that I think that are more reminiscent of Hinduism. And so I think it's a deck which draws upon a philosophy which overlaps with Buddhism. Buddhism and Hinduism overlap in many, many ways. but there are certain distinctions as well. And sometimes I feel that this deck is drawing more upon Hindu philosophy rather than Buddhist philosophy. And I just want to say that, or Zen philosophy, and I just want to say that, and that's why I think it's a deck which is really making me have to really think of the context that it's made in, the era that it's published in. And so, yeah, if you're interested, I might actually do a bit of a depth dive into this deck. Let me know. But yeah, I do think it's a great deck in terms of, as someone that wants to really, I myself want to explore and expand my tarot practice. It's definitely a deck for me in that sense. And yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting to work with this a little bit more. And the last deck that I'm going to show you, just going to quickly pick it up from here, is a deck that was recommended from Boho Tarot, Dawn Michelle. Thank you so much. I think it is her favorite deck. I'm going to say that, and it is the Luellen Tarot. Look at this magnificent box. Yes, so this arrived this week, so I'm really grateful because now I can do this video. This arrived this week. It is a beast of a box, as you can see, very good quality. The publishers are Luellen. And the author of the deck is Anne-Marie Ferguson. Really grateful for this deck. It is absolutely stunning. So it comes like this. This is the inside of the box. Beautifully made, beautiful workmanship. This is the book, a full huge book that goes with it, which I'm not going to go into too much right now, but as you can see, you know, it does give an in-depth look at kind of like what this deck is about. And this is how the cards are presented. Now I'm going to open, take them out, and the first thing I'm going to say is I am a bit of a cardstock snob. So originally when I was ordering this deck, I understand from many reviews and really expanding my tarot deck collection that Luellen cardstock is not a favorite with everyone, and so I was a little bit hesitant actually of buying this deck, because I was like, right, I'm going to spend like this much money and what am I getting? And yeah, there was a bit of fear of like, okay, so I bought this deck, but I was like, okay, I'm going to really check out this cardstock. Now this is the back of the deck, and I think it is stunning, absolutely beautiful. I love the motif in here, and the crest on the inside. But one of the things that I kind of like was a bit scared of was like, what is this cardstock going to be like? And I have to say, I think it is great cardstock. I have no fault with it. So I am pleasantly surprised. I'm really, you know, I'm okay with how much I paid for what I get. You know, it's great quality actually. So it is a little bit thinner than perhaps US Games, but that's okay. You know, like I don't think it's that. I don't think it's bad or anything like that. So I'm really happy with this. And so yeah, and here are the cards, and I think the cards are actually stunning. Now there's a word that I've picked up, and I think it's from Kelly in the Truth and Story, and the word is OMs, and I have no idea what this was. It's a part of ritual practice which I'm going to be exploring. But one of the things I've realized is that sometimes the borders of cards are actually very important as well. So I'm going to be keeping the borders of this deck because I think that they are gorgeous. I also like the fact that not with all the cards, but with some of the cards, you actually have, now not with the minors, but with some of the major arcanas, and I'll try and find one here, you actually also have kind of like a title for that specific card. For example, for the Emperor, they have Bran the Blessed. So you can see that some of the cards actually come with their own titles, and I think that is amazing. So these are the cards. Here is another one. This is Judgment, and it's actually called a sleeper. But I actually think the imagery of the cards is stunning. This is kind of like the imagery which makes me think that I can actually walk into the scene, and I think that is amazing. Like I can be invited into the scene, almost like I can meditate upon these cards and imagine myself standing in front of the Empress and seeing what it feels like to be in the woods with her. And you know, breathing in that air, and just I think that is something that's a gift from the artist to the reader. And yeah, so I am absolutely loving this deck, and I'm really looking forward to working with it. So this is upon recommendation from Dawn Michelle of Boho Tarot. I'm going to link her below as well and say a big thank you to her. So yeah, so this is the tarot decks that I've been picking up in the last few weeks, for me to expand my tarot practice. I've been making this video right at the end of the day, so please bear with me. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I can do more of these kind of videos if you're interested. Especially I can look at how am I using tarot decks as part of self-empowerment, part of mentoring, coaching, helping others, helping myself, how I can use the decks to go into more depth. And if you've enjoyed this video, let me know. Thank you.